Thank you, Dr. Maani, for accepting this invitation. We are at your service.
Thank you, Ramazan. My name is Kambiz Maani. I'm a resident of New Zealand for the past 41 years. Today I have been asked to share the story of Hedi. Hedi was my youngest uncle. And for those of you who are not, this is one photo of him. And the significance of his life is quite important to be shared. Let me go back to the date of October 1998. Actually, which is 27 years before. Today is the 19th day of October. So that was this last week that I'm going to begin the story that I'm going to share. It was a Thursday night on October 15, 1998 that we received a telephone call from Raven Barker. Raven Barker was to be fiancé of Hedi. They were going to get married and they were engaged. It was at 9:30 p.m. and we had just come back from an event at the University of Auckland, and this telephone call, and when I answered the phone, it was Raven that was sobbing. She could not be stopped, was crying heavily, and immediately we knew that something has happened. Then once she calmed down, she started to share what had happened, and it was about Hedi. She said that 2 days ago, he and Hedi were together, and Hedi had planned to leave Auckland for Ratna Pa. Ratna Pa is a community, church community of the Ratna group, which is a Maori church of New Zealand, the largest Maori church. And the reason for this trip was that the president of the church, whose name was Raniera Ratana, had passed. And that Hedi and the president, Raniera, they have been friends for some time, and Hedi had been introducing the Baha'i faith to him. And he has been very sympathetic and taken by the Baha'i faith, and that was the nature of that trip, that he was going to attend the funeral of the president of the Ratana Church. The same night, according to Raven, Hedi receives a telephone call from a person that was known to both of them. His name was Dean Hemepo. Dean had been a friend of Hedi, acquaintance of Hedi for some time. That particular night, he had asked Hedi that if he could join him in his travel to Ratna Pa, which is in the southwest part of New Zealand. Because this man, Dean, didn't have a car and didn't have any transport. And he actually asked Hedi to go and pick him up from downtown Auckland. Hedi lived in North Shore, Auckland, in a suburb called Devonport. And so he had to cross the bridge that crosses both sides of Auckland to come and pick him up. Raven, who was present during this conversation and overheard this, she became quite concerned because she had a very negative feeling about this man, and he had thought him to be a dangerous person, and he felt very uncomfortable for Hedi to do this, to go not only to take him with to the funeral event, but to go to the city and pick him up, because he had told Hedi that he doesn't have a bus fare. And those who knew Hedi, that he would not actually reject such a request. He had a very soft spot for the people who were in need, and basically his whole life was looking after the underprivileged and the needy. And he was a person that he knew, and he couldn't refuse that request. So that was the last time that Raven saw Hedy, because after they said goodbye and Raven went to her house, Hedy goes and picks up Dean from the bus station from downtown Auckland. Again, 2 days happens and Raven doesn't hear anything from Hedy. They were supposed to have left the next morning for this trip, which is about an 8-hour bus or car trip. And Raven becomes quite concerned that there is no news from Hedy since Tuesday night. So she goes to Hedy's house. She had the key, a spare key to the house. She goes to the house, and to her horror, she finds Hedy's body face down in the bathtub. And she becomes so upset and horrified that she couldn't stay any longer. She immediately leaves the house. She reports to the police, Takapuna police, which is in the North Shore community. And then she calls us, because I'm the closest relative of Hedy in New Zealand. I'm his eldest nephew in New Zealand. And so once we heard this story, we immediately, Shola and I, my wife, went to the Takapuna police station that night. And basically we were there until the morning, next morning. By the time they interviewed us, they took information from us and all that, but we were not allowed to go and identify the body that evening, that night, because they had to do some investigation. But according to Raven, who had seen the house, there was clear evidence of a struggle and violence in the house. Like the ironing table had been thrown away, the iron, and so it showed that there has been some struggle. And so Raven had reported this story of this conversation to the police. Because what happened also is that Dean Hemopo, after the event, after he murders Hedy that night, and we don't know which night, Tuesday night or Wednesday night, but we suspect it's the Tuesday night, 13th of October, he takes Hedy's car and drives to the Pa. Pa again is that village, church village. He drives there and the police finds that car that has been abandoned on the way in a smaller city. So police sends 2 detectives, flies them to the funeral event, and they arrest Dean Hemopo, not for murder, but for the stealing of the car, which he immediately confesses. He says, yes, I did that, I was with Hedy, I took his car, and I drove here. But nothing about the murder. But some of the members of the Ratna Church who had a few years before that, I think from 1995, 3 years before that, a group of their ministers, I think about 11 of the ministers of the church, they had declared their faith to Baha'u'llah. They had become Baha'is officially. And they had dropped their robe. They had the special robes that they were wearing in official ceremonies. They had dropped that and they had declared their faith as Baha'is to the church community. So they were known to that Ratna church that they're Baha'is. But that had started and incited some negative event, like the house of one of them had been burned down. So there had been evidences of violence and displeasure about that a group of the senior clergy of the church had become Baha'is and they live amongst them. And one of them, Juan Panapa, who knew Dean, he had actually told Raven that this Dean is a very dangerous person and he's not psychiatrically well. He's mentally has issues and he's not well. So that increased the suspicion of him actually doing the murder that night. So then we were encouraged, I think we consulted, and they were encouraged to share this further information, details about the nature of this man and the nature of the events that took place, the background of the sort of animosity of some of the members of the church towards the Baha'i faith with the police. And when this happened, then police actually, the nature of investigation changed, became more serious, and he was formally accused of murder. But he readily actually acknowledged that, confessed to the murder, and he said that he had done this. He actually shared more than he was asked. He said that this had been his intention for some time, and he had seen Hedi as an antichrist, as one who is the enemy of his church, and he's going to actually is the cause of the demise of his church. And he had seen the sign of the passing of the president as a sign that this is happening. So he thought that this, because the president was fairly a young person, he was only 60, 61, that passed away, and he had been the youngest son of the founder of the Ratana Church, who was a T.W. Ratana, which formed this church in 1918, just a few days later after the conclusion of the World War I. And he had seen himself, Ratana, as a person who can unify Maori tribes, or Whanua. So his message was not too dissimilar from the message of the Baha'i faith. The unity was the core of his message of the Ratana Church, but of course his focus was simply the Maori people and Maori Christians. And so the presidency, the leadership of the church had passed on to his sons, and Raniera was the last remaining, the surviving son of Ratana. So this man, Dean Hemepo, he saw the unexpected and untimely passing of the president of their church as a sign that Hedi is somehow responsible, and he's actually is becoming a destroyer of their church. And he called him, this is in the police report, the Antichrist, is the enemy of the church, and so on. And he had said that he had to be eliminated. So he confesses readily, and he's put to prison, and all of these are in the police report and in the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is report. So that basically summarizes the story of the event that night. Of course, after that many things happened. It was a big turmoil in the Baha'i and the Ratna Church. For example, Dean Hemepo's mother came with one of the Baha'is to come to Auckland and to visit the family, because Hedi's family, his brother, had arrived from America, from Europe, and for this funeral, and his son arrived from the US. So Dean's mother came to Auckland to sort of apologize, and she was very surprised that she was received with love and affection by the family of Hedi and by other Baha'is. So these events were quite unusual, and it surprised them, and many other things happened. I remember at the funeral, and so the funeral, or the tangi in the Maori way, it took place in a Maori culture form, which is the tangi, where they bring the body in an open casket, and it happens for 3 days, and they keep it in a marae, the meeting place or the worship place of the Maoris, and then people come and pay their respect, and there were over 1,000 people from all walks of life in Auckland, from politicians to academics to members of the Pacific community. Very few times we had seen such a diverse and group, and they treated that like a royalty. The way they brought gifts, the culture of the Pacific community. They bring gifts for the significant people and like royal members, royal family, and Hedi was treated nothing short of that. And this event took place 3 days, and the body was kept there for 3 days. So basically, they took the ownership of the event, and the body, but eventually, after this ceremony, it was buried in the North Shore, Baha'i community, Snapper Shore Cemetery in the North Shore. And the media reported heavily about this, so if I can show you some of this. This is the New Zealand Herald, dated October 19. That's exactly 27 days ago to the date, today's date. And that this section says, "Man of God mourned." And then there was a more detailed on the same edition. There was some more report of the house that belonged to Hedi's brother, and that was this happened here. And the headline says that Bash Baha'i gave whole life to serve it.